Check out the shares of Tesla this morning, off a little bit. The stock, on the one hand, is up more than 50% in the last year. Sort of see an indication of that. We don't go all the way back, but has declined nearly 50% from its all-time high, reached back just in December. Joining us now with more on Elon Musk and the Tesla brand, Tim Higgins, Wall Street Journal reporter and a CNBC contributor. Tim, good morning.
Good morning.
My mind races. Over the weekend, I did happen to drive by a Tesla dealership. You know what I was on my way to?
What?
Taco Bell. But I did drive, and there were a lot of people, Tim, with signs. Not a lot, I'd say 10 or 12. And one of them said, "No dogs allowed," which I thought was kind of funny. No D-O-G-E-S.
Oh, doges.
Instead of dog. So I get it. And Mark Kelly is getting rid of his, and there's Molotov cocktails. So I get it. Why do you think Elon Musk seems to be less than concerned about the effect on his brand than you would think?
Yeah, you would think he'd be freaking out, right? But, traditionally, if you look kind of that long arc of time with Elon Musk, marketing is a thing, but he tends to argue that the product will overcome, that the product will sell itself, that if it's such a great product, people will just buy it, that it'll spread. You don't have to have television advertising because word of mouth will help it. And it seems to be a bet that Tesla is, at least on the cusp, if not in the near term, over the long term, will have technology that will just bring people to it, right? He is making the bet that autonomous vehicles, that robots will be the future. That's a huge bet. That's a bet that I think investors were excited about a couple years ago when he was clearly running the company on a more engaged basis. Now the question is, how much involvement is he having? And also, how willing are they willing to go with this kind of bet?
That could be much more important, I think, Tim. That they need, maybe they need more of his time. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But the brand thing, it's exactly the conclusion that I came to. If I was going to buy, if I was going to buy an EV, I'd still buy a Tesla. That's all I see driving around. Every once in a while, I might see what are those other ones, Polaris? Or I very rarely see that many other EVs other than Tesla. And what you said, think about what he's staking Tesla's future on in terms of automation and robo-taxis and all those. If those come through, none of this is really going to matter. And you remember a couple years ago when he had bought Tesla and the advertisers were leaving, and he was asked, "What about that?" And he said they can go F themselves or something. I mean, just said it in front of like a bunch of people. And then I think he said, "If you didn't hear me," I think he said it again. And he didn't care then either.
Yeah, absolutely. It was when he bought Twitter, it was go F yourself to those advertisers who didn't want to be there. He seems to be doing the same play here. But I think the stakes are a little bit different. The car business is a cash-eating machine. Yes, he's got a bunch of cash, but that's cash to get the company to the future. Heading into potential recession concerns, that's not a good place when you're a car company. And then the other thing is that while he's making the bet on robots, the near term, it's not clear that there's a huge product lineup. Maybe perhaps a decontented vehicles here in the near term. Is that really going to move the needle? That's what some investors are very much worried about. But to your point, yeah, it's a long-term play in his mind, but the market is not that long-term.
Well, I was going to follow up with that. I guess at some point, Tim, you would think maybe that you're going to have him go back to the company, and maybe, do you think he gets tired of this? How long do you think?
Well, it's interesting. If you look at the mandate for Doge, it's into the next summer of 2026 for him. He seemed to suggest that he's going to be there for the next year. In his mind, at least what he's talked about, it is an assignment. It's not the rest of his life. And he seems to be making the argument that the world or the U.S. needs him now. One of the interesting things about Tesla, though, as a brand story, one of its successes is that it got beyond the idea of an electric car company, right? If you look at third-party consumer data from the likes of Strategic Vision, those people that poll or take surveys of people to buy the car, They would talk in the past about why they were buying it was because of its performance, because of its looks, not because necessarily it was a green car. And that's really where electric car makers want to get. They want to get past the idea of being a green car. Now, if it's seen as being political, that's some baggage that he's going to be dealing with when he goes back to the day-to-day at Tesla. That
was a point they made. I mean, in this administration, any of those EV mandates that you were counting on, to hasten the transition, those may or may not hold up. I mean, the whole climate change, that narrative, that orthodoxy is challenged even by the new Secretary of Energy to some extent. The one thing I would say, Tim, I have criticized so many times when companies get too woke, and I always bring up Michael Jordan. Republicans buy sneakers too. He would never engage in that. And now it's sort of the other way. Democrats buy Teslas. Boy, do they ever! And so that is a strategic. If all he cared about was maximizing sales, that would be a strategic mistake.
Right. Traditionally, Republicans haven't bought a lot of electric cars. Now, perhaps they will buy Teslas. But Democrats seem to be shying away from it. It's almost like a Bud Light moment. And we saw what happened there.